I would like to welcome back to the show Chris Fisher. He's the founder of OSearch. And earlier in the week, Chris, you provided us with an overview with all the things that you are doing. And again, it is truly amazing. Today, we're going to go more on the local spin. You have a lot of connections here to Jacksonville, but also we're going to talk about local sharks right off our shores. So let's really start out with your connection with JU and something that you have in development up in Mayport.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be back. We partnered with JU years ago, and really the main reason we did is because President Tim Cost is really just a thought leader and a forward-thinking man when it comes to education and creativity and collaboration. And him, along with Quentin White, who runs the MSRI there, these guys, we met with them years ago. We saw that we had shared values. They understand the value in collaborating with other universities, putting the ocean and the planet first to maximize the results in science and share it with the world. And when we went around and looked at universities to potentially create the future home of OSearch back in the day, just those two men just really rose up head and shoulders above everyone else we met. And we were thrilled to find a place that we could make the academic home of OSearch. And also, you really see the beginnings of setting up OSearch so that it can transcend any individual and be here to serve the future in perpetuity. So we work with Quentin White, and our main chief scientist that's located actually at JU, handling most of our tracking telemetry, is Dr. Brian Franks, another amazing guy. And the team that they have underneath them has really allowed us to now share OSearch in the academic space at a level we never could. It's going to allow us to take everything we learn and develop an OSearch Ocean Policy Institute there so we can make sure those learnings are leveraged through policy in the future and management. So we just couldn't be any more thrilled about the partnership we have there. And then that evolved when the city of Mayport was looking to kind of redevelop itself, and Jacksonville University and Mayport began to talk, and OSearch came into the conversation. And they really wanted to create a home for OSearch. And we were really thrilled because for the last 12 or 13 years, I got a crew of guys living on a ship 11 months of the year, vagabonding around the world. We never really had a home. We were just moving from expedition to expedition in a different region of the world to the different region of the world. And it was hard on my guys as they start to mature. They didn't really have a place to go home to. So they couldn't even really have a home or a family. And I really wanted to create an opportunity for the people and the expertise that's on the ship, right? These guys got a unique skill set. They can go anywhere in the world and capture the biggest things in the water and deliver them safely to scientists. That's a priceless skill set. And so you want to try to create an environment for them to flourish across their personal lives and not lose talent and have to retrain people. I mean, this is not a type of skill that lots of people have developed over time. It's a very unique thing. And so we're thrilled about the new dock. We just are working on the designs for what's going into Mayport. They're looking at the overall development of the area to maintain, some of its classic, maritime history, but also move it forward in the world of innovation and science and collaboration. And so we love those things coming together. That's a lot of what OSearch is all about. And so we'll be really excited in a couple years when that facility is done and people will be able to come down and see the ship, and we'll have a shark center and a visitor center so you can bring down kids. Hopefully we'll have a nice setup there for a lot of schools to regularly bring down classrooms for educational components and really engage the public and at every level from grown-ups down through students. And I think what makes it really interesting and what's so strategic about Jacksonville and the location there is you have this amazing river, the St. Johns River, coming into town. And right outside of that river, you're in a very unique place. You're in a place where our white sharks are overwintering. They arrive down there in the November, December timeframe, and they overwinter in the region between Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and Cape Canaveral, Florida. And a lot of them are moving from wreck to wreck and reef to reef right off the beaches of the areas of Jacksonville in the wintertime so we can study white sharks there. When it starts to heat up in the summer and it gets too warm for the white sharks, they push up to the north like we're seeing now. They're up off of New England and off of Atlantic Canada. And when that happens, tiger sharks move up into the region. So it gives us an opportunity to study and create access to the science community of these large tiger shark. So you live in a very, very special place there. It's one of the only places where when those seasonal shifts are occurring, whether it's like this November-ish time frame or then later in the spring around May, when white sharks and tiger sharks are both present for a short period of time. And that's very unique. We've not really been in places in the world where you're working and you sample and capture and tag and release a white shark, and then later in the day you sample and tag and release a tiger shark. It's a very special place there, so it's the perfect location for an operation like ours. And then when you see the character and the values coming out of JU and the people of Mayport, it's just a thrill for us to know that we're going to be calling Jacksonville and Mayport the permanent home of OSearch into the future.
Yeah, and it has to be nice, again, to have that one place to call home. I realize why that's important.
Yeah, and I'm like, now at least my guys, I'm like, look, you got to go out on a 4-month trip or a 5-month trip, but you can come home and you can be at a home for 5 or 6, 7 months a year so you can have a family, and you don't need to leave OSearch to get a different type of job to have both personal success and professional success.
Absolutely. And, when you were talking about the sharks, the tiger shark and the great white shark here off the coast, really of like Jacksonville Beaches area, what are they eating? Because a lot of times those big sharks that you see all over the world, it's things like sea lions and stuff like that. When you're an apex predator, what are they eating in our region to sustain their size?
So they're balancing the system, right? So they move from event to event to event. So when you got big bull redfish piled up at the end of a river on a jetty, they're on that. That's like a 40-pound gumdrop for them, right? When you have the black drum making runs down the beaches, they're on that. They're on big bait aggregations, right? It's not always about large things. It's about the total biomass that's there, right? So even a massive school of small fish is fine for them. Believe it or not, they rummage around in the bottom, and if you have big aggregations of crabs and things like that, they'll eat up the crabs. So they are balancing the system, making sure that one species doesn't become a runaway freight train and over forage. They're also eating some porpoises, like when you have a cold snap and the porpoise and the dolphin get pushed out of the rivers, they're taking advantage of that. They're at the river mouth waiting, right? And so there's lots of opportunities for them to feed. It's interesting because of our work before we really got started, people said things like, once white sharks get big and they're mature, they only eat marine mammals. Well, now we know from our tracking that they're spending half the year in places where there are no marine mammals. And so they're eating a ton of fish and squid. The other thing that they will do is they'll forage on the odd dead whale. So in the wintertime, back where you all are, you got the right whales coming down and birthing. If there's maybe a stillborn pup or a baby whale, they'll eat that. If a whale naturally dies, like a humpback whale, they're eating that, cleaning it up so then it falls to the bottom, then all the crabs can eat that, right? And a whole food system is working together. So they're doing their job. They're cruising around, taking out the weak, the dead, and the dying. They're preventing the second tier from becoming a runaway foraging freight train and balancing the system. I think the most interesting thing that everyone needs to understand is it's a tremendous success story and something to be celebrated that we are in the midst of a slow recovery of our large sharks. As these large sharks numbers continue to go up, we're still a fraction of the population that they're supposed to be. As they continue to go up, we're going to see more and more fish. Now, for the fishermen out there, it's going to be easier to get a bite, but you're going to get sharked more, which probably means you're going to have to gear up, right? The days of ultralight fishing are going to be gone because that fish is going to be taken by the tax man. So you just got to gear up a little bit. You got to catch them and reel them in a more appropriate amount of time. And then if you need to release that fish, it's in better shape anyway because you haven't overplayed it, right? It's strong enough to get away and recover. So there'll be some shifts in how people fish, but it'll be easier than ever to get a bite because the abundance, the aggregate abundance will continue to rise as our sharks recover.
And what do you attribute the shark population becoming in a more healthier state, starting to grow?
Well, back in the 90s, our white sharks in particular and tiger sharks were pummeled, right? After Jaws, their levels came down to, some said, 9% of the population we needed for the system to be healthy. And these animals can't have babies till they're about 20 years old. And then they only have babies every other year, and they only have 6 or 8. So you're never going to have like a real fast recovery. When we protected the white shark in the 90s, that was the beginning. But the real breakthrough, I believe, that occurred was in the late 90s. The real breakthrough that I believe occurred was in the late 80s and early 90s when NOAA, our federal management, began to work with the states to remove inshore gill nets because they wanted to bring back the inshore snook fisheries. They wanted to bring back the inshore redfish fisheries, and up north, the inshore striper fisheries, because the fishing had gotten so bad, the recreational fishing economy had tanked. And they wanted to bring back all those jobs, the boat builders, the fishing equipment, because believe it or not, the economic impact of recreational fishing is the same as the economic impact of commercial fishing. But recreational fishing is only responsible for 2% of the take, right? So we want that big, robust economy because, the individual rod and reel is so inefficient, the system can handle it very easily. And so when they wanted to bring these recreational economies back, they banned inshore gill nets because that was what was wiping out a lot of these inshore fish. In 2016, Mary Lee, one of our massive female white sharks, went into the New York, New Jersey bite, and we were like, oh, wow, that looks like a birthing run. And then we followed her in there, and we found the birthing site building on Jack Casey's work from the 80s and confirmed that that was one of the white shark birthing spots in the New York, New Jersey bite on the South Shore, Long Island. So we went up there and we tagged 19 baby white sharks, about 10 and 16 and 9 and 17. When we tagged those baby white sharks, we saw that they were cruising right down the beaches from Long Island all the way down the first year of their life into South Carolina. The second year of their life, they start to extend closer down to Northeast Florida. And as they get bigger, that nursery extends all the way down the east coast of Florida. So at the time, we didn't know it, but we removed the inshore gill nets from the white shark nursery. And then what you see 20 years later, when they become mature, we started to see them up in places like Cape Cod, sniffing around, trying to eat a seal. And that was about 20 years later when we started to see that really begin to build. And so now that we're 30 years later, 31, 32 years later, we have a larger population of mature white sharks dropping off more pups in the nursery. They're now surviving at a better rate in the nursery because those gill nets have been removed. And we're getting more and more bigger balance keepers in the ocean. You live in a really special place, right? You have some juvenile white sharks, like, using the nursery there in a more coastal level. And then you have these bigger animals more offshore, occupying there in the wintertime. So really, if we succeed off of Jacksonville and in that region, we are succeeding in creating the balance keepers for the future of the ocean for the entire eastern seaboard, right? Incredibly special place that needs to be looked after to make sure we're all really proud of what we deliver in the ocean to our grandchildren and future generations.
Absolutely. Well said. I love talking to you because I learned so much. Chris, thanks again for all of your time and your information and for doing what you're doing. And if people want to learn more, the website's osearch.org, and they could go online and they could actually help out with funding, contribute, you buy things. But then also, I think it's important to follow you guys on social media because you learn so much. You do a great job of sharing of what you are accomplishing.
Yeah, I mean, OSearch is not anyone's, it's everyone's. So come and be a part of OSearch. It's all for all of us and our grandkids.
Thanks again. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Facing the Fall, a virtual town hall. News4Jax is helping